Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, man. What's going on?
Good. Not much. Well, a lot, but
Yeah, I hear
okay
you.
this morning.
Nice to meet you, man. Are you in Boston?
I'm in Boston, yes.
Right on. Yeah, I'm in Kansas City.
Yeah, I
Uh,
noticed the hour difference. Yeah, noticed
yeah.
the central time thing. Yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
man, it's
cool.
great to catch up with you about the new album, about surviving COVID, everything that's going on. And I think probably the name of your album is probably apropos for these post-pandemic times with Wake Up. Um,
Yeah,
so before we,
thanks for having me and
yeah, for
give
sure.
me a
And
chance to chat about it.
before we get into Wake Up, we all survived the last 3 years with COVID. It was quite a time, especially for the jazz community. How did you survive it, and how has it changed you?
Great question. I would say, um, I survived it. Believe it or not, the two institutions that I teach at Emerson College, which is in Boston. I do a bunch of lecturing there, jazz history. And then I'm the chair of the jazz department at a small conservatory called the Longy School of Music, which is affiliated with Bard College. And that's a graduate program. And both of those stayed open with some pretty severe, safety precautions in place and distancing, masking, no public, no audience for the students to perform, but we had classes, we had even ensembles. Singing was the challenging part. We didn't really have people singing, but we had
Yeah.
people playing. So that was going on, and definitely kept all the student spirits up and the faculty and everybody. So that was good, and kept me busy, kind of as administrator too of that, navigating like, so and so has COVID. We're kind of running through those early days of the vaccine and things like that, where you didn't want to have a breakout in the school. We never really did have like a super spreader. We
Yeah.
always just had little pockets of students that got sick, and it was usually from their roommates or because they traveled or something, wasn't school related. So that took up a lot of my time, and that was a good thing because there were barely any gigs. And then in the summers that we'd get some outdoor gigs with various projects I had. So and of course it's hard to do rehearsals, it's hard to record. We did one recording project, an album called Period Pieces, and it came out in 22 because that um we did in like isolation booths. We were in the studio and we all agreed just to stay in our booths all day,
Yeah.
bring lunch and just do that. So that worked. I think I know a lot of groups, a lot of colleagues did stuff like that. Um, and then things flipped around in 2022. So yeah, the toughest year was 20
Yeah.
because I had some albums come out then, and there was momentum building, and it was just like, in terms of already having tours, things, I was supposed to go to Japan, for example. No, that didn't happen. I was supposed to do some other touring domestically. That didn't happen. I was supposed to schedule some tours. That didn't happen. So everything got push. So now it's coming back. It's been really busy. So you kind of forget the tough days with all the positive stuff
Yeah.
going on now.
Yeah. We
Yeah.
certainly do. I mean, but I think the appreciation is there. I think there's a different energy and level with the audiences. Do you feel that?
Oh yeah, and that was your follow-up question. I know what it how did it change? Um, well, one, definitely noticed that, like the different audience appreciation, even in the um even sometimes smaller audiences can be like, I played a lot of, so short coda to what I was saying. I did get to go back to Japan this summer. That 2020 tour waylaid 3 years, and it was just amazing. It was just awesome. We played these small jazz rooms, and everybody was just so excited and so appreciative, and to be kind of up close with the music. So there's been definitely been a different type of engagement, and for me, I think that's carved out a space for two things. One, um, to be a little bit more discerning in some ways, and like the type of performances I want to do, and discerning in a way of repertoire, and really focusing on things that I really value and mean a lot to me, and can share very passionately, whether it's an arrangement of a standard or original music. Share that very authentically and passionately with an audience, which I think is going to respond better anyway. right?
Yeah.
You know, sometimes you're just doing a gig like, oh yeah, I just couldn't do that gig at the club, but it's a noisy jazz bar, and you're like, whatever, no one's even listening to me. You can get kind of, you know, disconnected from why you do what you do and the love of it. And I think that definitely, you know, I'm still in the love affair of
Yeah.
that space of performing. Like, oh my gosh, I get to perform. This is so great, and I'm gonna play my music or so and so's music that I'm in their project. That's like the excitement of like just coming back from a gig, just so amped up, so just kind of naturally high from the experience of just sharing music with humans.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and this album has to feel good to have it out now with the live shows happening. Talk to me about how this album came together.
Yeah, so this project, The Five Agents, has always had kind of a um, social activist kind of underpinning in terms of the first album, Book of Water, focusing on the environment and climate change, climate activism, and that's one of the bands actually that didn't get a chance to really blossom because of the pandemic from when that album came out. So that was on like hiatus, and then the drummer in the band, Kurt Newton, um, was able to find really kind of rallied the team and said, hey, you know, I found some financial supporters. If we can, you know, commission you to like write another climate action suite, you know, would that like entice you to, you know, kind of steer, you know, because I'm often in multiple projects. Everybody is, right? Multiple projects, multiple directions, teaching, trying to pay the bills and stuff. But I was like, yes, like let's do it. And it kind of realigned my focus on that, which is something I was very passionate about. But sometimes when things get in the back burner, they can stay there forever if you're not careful. And so that's what happened. So he was really the inspiration of getting it going. And then as I kind of did the research for the project, that's where I connected waking up, like that term, that phrase, to the speech of Greta Thunberg at the UN, and just kind of blossomed from there. So now we're putting together. So the album just dropped, as you know, and we're putting together the big focus is going to be. So the fall is just getting the album out and getting that kind of word out and kind of building some momentum there. And then the springtime is going to be, especially April, because it's Earth Month. Do a lot of do a lot of performances around the East Coast to start there at a lot of colleges that are doing a lot of Earth Day celebrations and climate activism during that month. So we're trying to connect the music to that movement, also in the performance space.
So what are you hoping the listener gets from this album?
What I hope that the listener, well, first of all, I hope they think that it's really fun and surprising, because there's a lot of changes of mood and texture, yet there is this through line of different kind of motivic ideas or riffs or grooves. It's very groove based, I think, but the grooves evolve and change. And the featured voices evolve and change. So I think of it, even when I listen back to it, I think of it as this like 4-part interlocking 55-minute suite. I think of it as this interesting journey. So I want them to be surprised. I want them to have fun. I want them to maybe think about, you know, I had my source materials and I had, you know, my space and inspiration from, but it's not really, I'm not trying to tell people what to think or feel, right? Art shouldn't necessarily do that.
Yeah.
Art should open a window or a door to possibilities and some contemplation, and whatever that may be for the listener, I'm all about it. So you know, they can read the liner notes on, you know, on Bandcamp or my website or other digital platforms that support the text to give one a background of that kind of where I was inspired from. But then I kind of want to let the art stand and let each listener have a relationship with it. And so for me, if anything, waking up just from the title, even if if they listen on Spotify and Spotify doesn't, you know, have us put liner notes up, right? So just like waking up, okay, it can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. So even if they just contemplate that and listen to the journey and say like, wow, there's a lot of different directions this goes, and they just think about all the different directions a day might go, a day in the life, that would make me infinitely happy just to hear that somebody heard that record and was like, it was so full of surprises, almost just like any day that you wake up and you don't know what's going to happen. I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's the human life experience. But and think about it, from a social or humanity scale with climate change too. It's like we don't know what's going to happen, so let's be open to possibilities.
So speaking of opening the door, how did this jazz journey begin for you? Where were you born and raised, and how did you get into the jazz?
Um, so I was born in Rochester, New York. It's in Western New York. Um, and really the journey began for me in high school. When I was playing guitar, but mostly like rock and blues rock. And I asked my guitar teacher, is there more than the pentatonic scale? And he said, yeah, he had gone to Berkeley in his undergrad. This was the 90s, so I think he was very much like a jazz rock fusion-y player, like Chick Corea, that type of Return to Forever fusion space, right? Kind of a shredder. And he said, oh, you got to check out this Miles Davis. And I'm sure he was thinking of, some of the Miles fusion stuff, but I went to the record store and picked up Miles Smiles as my first jazz record ever, which is a pretty confounding album if you've never listened to jazz. And so that's where it got started. I fell in love with that communication that band had, and the groove and the feel. So this was in high school, like I said, 16, 17 years old. And so then I decided that this was going to be my life, and went to conservatory, went to grad school, and started playing and gigging and making projects and putting out albums and touring and building and building.
So what was the first live jazz show you ever saw that blew you away?
The first live jazz show that really blew me away. Well, it was going to be in high school, and it was Dizzy Gillespie. It was a small jazz club in Rochester, New York. It was a 21 plus show, but they, it was like whatever, in the mid 90s, they were just like, you're actually here to listen to jazz, you can go in.
Yeah.
And we sat, like, me and my other friend in high school, who was a sax player who was also into jazz, like sat right in the front row. We could reach out and touch Dizzy Gillespie. And we had come across some of those early 40s, like Diz and Bird records. And so just to be in the same room, as that type of history was just so, gave you goosebumps at the time. So that was the first transformational, right? Because in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, all those so many of those living legends were still here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what did you glean either from seeing these masters perform or being around veterans? What did you get from them that you in turn try to teach and impart to your students?
Yes. Well, great question. How much time do you have? I would say the couple, well, I'm going to pull out even bigger. One, that this is a very serious discipline, that should be, treated with a lot of respect and a lot of hard work. That it is not easy. If anybody ever, questions like, oh, you play jazz, the cliches, even in the music world. I mean, I navigated it in academia or on the bandstand, oh, you play jazz, that's why you're late, that's why you're late, or whatever, like, the old tropes, the old cliches, right? That exist still. And I was like, regardless of how society views jazz or you or music or whatever, it is, when you dig into it, you will realize that, that music in general is like a life-saving power. It's a community builder. It's a tool of communication. It's an expressive tool that bonds, us together as a society. It has the power to heal, and to mend differences, and to forge relationships. And just taking on that alone, you have this great responsibility. Like, you need to respect the music, and the history, and work so hard. But at the same time, this music is also super joyful and a lot of fun and very empowering, and it celebrates individuality. So you need to take it seriously. But then, something from the veterans, like they were always, that I got to work with or record with or see, always humble and always having a blast, right? Nothing was just like, oh, this is terrible, this sucks, or like, or beating themselves up for making mistakes or something like, and that's all. That's improvisation, is you have to embrace the mistakes, roll with it. So that type of thing. So trying to balance constantly with students or younger musicians that I perform with in various projects is like, it's okay. One of my big pet peeves is in a rehearsal situation or before performance situation is like the excuse, like, oh, so I'm not gonna be able to, before you play, if somebody says something like, I don't really want to hear it, or after the gig, I'm sorry I missed that. I don't. It's like with my music, I honestly, unless you didn't show up, then we have a problem. Right, because then you messed up my performance. But if you're going for something and you don't get it, that's the art. That's the edge that I love to be on. And so, and that's what life is all about. You got to try stuff. And so I try to impart with my students, like, master your instrument as best as you can. It's a lifelong journey of mastery. But remember that you are also trying to master, this ability, this skill set of navigating the unknown. And you have to be joyful and excited about it and willing to take risks. That's really tough for students who came out of like an undergrad program that was all about like, you got to do this is how you play, this is how you play. And whether it's classical or jazz or whatever, the idea of rules. And then for me, like from the players I got to play with and record with, Han Bennick, John Sakai, Cecil McBee, Matt Wilson, like it's all about like, yep, you know what you know, and then just go for it. You have to go for it. Like being reserved and playing it safe is not, A, that's not really living, and B, it's certainly not jazz music.
Yeah. So what is it that you like the best about being a professional musician?
I mean, that's easy. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about teaching and informing the next generation of players, and whether they be, like I said, in my projects now, the younger generation of professionals or the students. But no question it's performing and getting to perform, especially your own project or somebody else's original project, where you're really invested in their story or your story, or you're just kind of working together. You're passionate about the repertoire. You're passionate about the camaraderie or the music that you're making. Like if I'm not, laughing on stage, just having a blast, then maybe I won't do that gig again.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, it's really that. I mean, I can't even express how elated I am when I get home from a gig or when I get off stage. It's just like, it's more than 4 shots of espresso. I mean, I'm just so up from it, so energy, because it's just so, I feel so alive, and I could do that as a guitarist. I'm I'm about to turn 50. Sometimes the physicality of the instrument beats me up. Like I wake up the next morning like I played, a full 4 quarters of full court basketball or something. Like my back is like aching, and my like shoulders are like, and my neck's all messed up. I'm like, oh man, like because I played my butt off and put this physical energy in, and that instrument is demanding on your body. Like it's just it's not built for human ergonomics.
Yeah.
So as much as like I will pay for it that next morning or whatever, I just like go for it. In the performance, I mean, obviously I live for my family and friends and everything, but like when I'm talking about my career and craft, it's that moment, that performing.
Yeah. So why do you love jazz?
Because there's not only room for me and what I want to say, but there's room for everybody, and I love the communication about that. I love the unpredictability, the ability to go on stage, call a tune, or play something that we've rehearsed, and then still have it. Doesn't matter how many times you've rehearsed, just going back to like Waking Up, that's a very intricate album, but it's got a lot of open spaces where we're going from the printed page, the ink, into improvised material, or sometimes the lines are super blurred where half the band might be playing something composed, and half the band's improvising, and then it overlaps, and the people improvising are going back to the ink, and the improvisers go back, or the people who are improvising go back to ink, and the ink players go to improvising, or whatever. And I love that flexibility, and I love that kind of, just, to quote Wayne Shorter, just being into that unknown, going to that space where, you might have rehearsed a bunch of hours and you think it's going to go this way, but as soon as you start playing, whether it's in the studio or on the bandstand, kind of all bets are off.
Mm-hmm.
And some people panic about that, right? So, oh my God, I'm so bad, so sorry I messed up that spot. I'm like, no, that spot was what it needed to be today. Next time we play, it'll be different. It might be better in your mind, but it'll be different. And I just, why I love jazz so much is because it allows for that. Before I played guitar, I played saxophone, various saxophones in a lot of classical settings, and I was very good at it. I, achieved, all the little high school, achievements, all state this, blah, 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 blah. But it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
It made me very anxious. And as soon as I picked up the guitar when I was 16, going on 17 there, I was like, oh, now I can express myself. I always loved music, and I always loved listening to it and being a part of it and making it. But then just being an improviser, and having that, yes, it's freedom, but it's not just freedom, because there's rules. There's, just like society, there's rules you have to follow. So it's not about the freedom. It's about the space that's created for you to be yourself, to be an individual. That's what I love about it.
So, obviously you saw Dizzy, which is somebody that a lot of people would love to see as a true jazz legend. But in these modern day and times that we're in, who's somebody that you haven't seen that you would love to see perform live?
That's a good question. That I haven't seen. So have never seen.
Yeah, you've never seen live, but you would love to.
Okay. Well, in the non-jazz realm, I would love to see, but still an improviser, I would love to see Stevie Wonder. I've never seen Stevie Wonder perform. And I've had a lot of friends who have, and they're just like, oh yeah, that was a bucket list moment. And it's just never worked out for me, with where he was and where I was, and this, that, and the other thing. So that would be somebody for sure. In terms of like the jazz players, that's because I've seen, anybody who's really come through that have been like mentors or inspirations or people I've played with or that I knew, I've been blessed enough to see them. And as long as they're still living, I will, when they're playing Boston or somewhere in New England, I will see them. There hasn't, in terms of like the jazz world, there honestly hasn't been anybody that I really haven't seen that I've missed out. I mean, I got to see Sonny Rollins. I've seen Wynton Marsalis. The list can go on from very straight ahead to big band to solo piano to inside, outside, Latin jazz. Like I've really been lucky enough to be sure to pursue that community and hear the music live. So the only one that comes to the top of my list is literally Stevie Wonder.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, students, but you're in control of it all. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a great question. Are you also a therapist?
This is the therapy hour. Yes.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so I can cancel my therapy this week.
That's right. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, everything's good. It's all part of a jazz interview with 2 birds with 1 stone.
Oh, thank you, Joe. That's saving me money. I mean, this is all good. Yeah,
absolutely. Let the healing begin.
Yes. So I mean, you raise a good point. That's a whole other conversation. The different, your family, your parents, your wives or husbands or partners or whatever, your kids and friends, music colleagues, and then students. That's a whole other different world of perception. And the funny thing is like, and you get like leadership positions. I have this title of, you know, chair of a jazz department, and you know, a band leader, a composer and band leader that's put out X amount of, you know, albums, somewhere in the, I think my discography is up to like 40 something. I mean, that's a lot. And so people are like, whoa, okay. So you have this perception. And then me, you know, I think of myself as still a student of this craft. First of all, I feel inside, except in the mornings after a gig where my body feels very sore and old. But the spirit inside me is still that youthful kid, who's, you know, in awe of the mysticism and kind of spiritual magical space that is this music, right? Of like seeing Dizzy Gillespie, or you know, who else I see like super early on, McCoy Tyner, or Art Blakey, or something like that, in those early 90s years. And it's just like this match, and there's this reverence. So I'm still like a devoted, I see myself as a devoted, eternal kind of student of kind of the magic that is this music, that is like endlessly, there's endless things to learn. There's endless things to communicate as an educator. Like being a good learner helps me become you know, being a good student of the music and of the history helps me be not only more creative as a performer, but also as an educator. So I think my perception of me is, you know, somebody who needs to practice, somebody who needs, you know, wants to carve out more time to compose, somebody who's just wants to, you know, get at this music and keep working and keep learning.
Yeah.
Right. Like I don't believe anybody, there are masters, but but those masters, they don't tend to call themselves masters, and masters tend to know that they've never mastered, you know, you can't master anything. And that's kind of my ideal. There's a piece of advice that Richard Davis gave me, great bass player, several years ago. He was teaching at Oberlin, where I did my undergrad, and I was always practicing in the jazz office because that was my work study job, doing like the, you know, typing out emails for the chair and whatnot. And so, but he taught there when he came to the bass students, and so he'd have to kick me out every time. So one time, the first bass student would come in and play with me. We'd be warming up, and saying, okay, I got to go, lesson time. And then one day he just said, you're always here, why don't you just stay? And, you know, a company, you know, they're working on their bass lines and stuff, and why don't you just play some chords? And every once in a while he'd pick up their bass and play with me. Be like, come on, play a tune, you know, play something. And that was a great experience. And so it would be like the first lesson, second lesson, and whatever, though, he would come in every other week, Wednesday. And I had classes all day that day, but if he came and he told me to stay, I'd stay for all 6 lessons. I'd skip the whole day. Like, I'm getting 6 hours. I'm getting 6-hour lesson with Richard Davis. Bass players think they're getting a great lesson. I'm getting like the life lessons every day. And he said this one time to a student, but also to me, because he had me play Green Dolphin Street and a bunch of different keys. He's like, don't tell me what key you're going to, just change it in the middle of a phrase, halfway through a bar. I don't care. Just change it. And he'd like try to follow along. And then he's like, now play something. It's like, play a tune of yours, but I don't know. Make sure something is, I don't know. And I play something, and he sounded great on everything, on anything, any tempo, any key. And he said this, he said, so the bass, both of us were like, wow, how did you come up with something, you know? And I can't even remember now if they were like the right notes. It wasn't about the right notes. It was about using his ear and creating music and having that confidence to play something and say, this works because we say so. We agreed, me and you. And he said, I don't know any tunes. Therefore, I know every tune. And that little bit of Zen Buddhism, you know, that Zen wisdom, I was just like, yes, if I can ever get to that space. So that's like the perception of myself is that student still trying to not know every tune so I can know every tune.
Yeah, I dig it. You know, it's funny. I'm gonna do kind of a tribute to him this week because he passed away at 93. I'm doing Andrew Hill's Point of Departure, which was such a great album.
Such a great album.
But I've heard so many stories about how good he is. So let's get all the good details out about the new album, best place to
Yeah.
pick it up, anything about live shows, where can people go to figure all this out?
Okay. So the best place, or my preferred place, I mean, it's an album that's addressing issues of like climate activism and climate change and the environment and stuff. So it's a digital only release. My preferred place to check it out, so folks can stream it and also download it and support the artists, is Bandcamp. It's one of my favorite platforms for independent artists. And plus, there you can get all the bonus materials. You can get a JPEG of the album cover. You get the liner notes and everything. You get all the details. You get to know what it is, instead of Apple Music and Spotify that just give you the picture and say my name, and then you listen to the music without the context. And context is important with improvised music. So Bandcamp is the preferred spot, but yes, it is globally available on all digital platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, everywhere around the world. But Bandcamp is the artist preference. And then in terms of the shows, like I said, comes out in the fall, kind of try to build up some traction. And then we're really looking towards like a March, April, starting with an East Coast tour, mostly universities, colleges, affiliated with, various Earth Month or Earth Day events. And then from there, we'll kind of do the next round of touring and playing and try to take it a little bit bigger, a little bit broader.
Excellent. Hey, man, this has been great. Eric, thank you so much for opening up about the album, about your life and music. I appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Yeah, this is really cool. This is a little bit more kind of unexpected, very personal, kind of honest interview. It wasn't just about the music, and I really appreciate the humanistic side of it. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.